It was a big night on the big stage. Jamaica Labour Party leader Andrew Holness and the People's National Party President Dr. Peter Phillips in the 2020 general election debate. But after 90 minutes, just who won? Hello, I'm Neville Graham. Thank you for joining us for Jamaica Votes, the debate review. To help us assess the leadership debate, we're joined on Zoom by Dr. Maziki Thame. She is a senior lecturer in the Institute of Gender and Development Studies at the University of the West Indies, Mona. Dr. Unique Campbell, lecturer in the Department of Government, also at the UWI. And we're also joined by financial analyst Dennis Chung. Also joining us is Danny Roberts, head of the Hugh Lawson Shearer Labour Studies Institute. So let me begin with Dr. Thame as the new person on the block because, we'd like to have you here. What was it for you, the high point of the debate?
That's difficult. I'm not sure I can identify a high point. I feel like there was a certain flatness to the debate that I'm not sure there were any high points.
How are you marking it, Dr. Campbell? Poor, average, above average?
Well, I enjoyed the debate for the most part. A lot of the issues were ventilated. Some of them needed to be examined and interrogated in greater detail. The gender issue, certainly. The crime and policing issue. It's a very complex issue and I expected to hear more. But overall, I think it was an interesting debate.
Dennis, you're the sort of person who likes a lot of detail, likes to see a proper exploration. Did it achieve that for you?
Well, I think that debate was good. It did cover a lot of issues. And for me, the quality of this debate was better because both of them were very specific about answering the questions. The problem with the details in a format like this is very difficult. When you have 90 seconds to answer a question, you really can't explore the details of it. So given the time factor, the limitation of time factor, I think that both acquitted themselves fairly well. I think that there was some amount of speaking to past things and what happened 20 years ago, which, for me always, takes away from the answers.
That you don't need the history lesson then?
I don't need a history lesson. I want to know what's happening tomorrow. For me though, I think that some of the questions could have been better because the fact is that they're restricted by time and the questions that are asked. So there was no question asked, for example, as to what are you going to do to manage the impending economic crisis that's coming and coming fast?
And nobody was talking about it. Seemed to be the big elephant in the room. Danny, in 60 seconds, where did Phillips and Holness score highly for you?
Well, I think both of them, I thought the debate was very interesting and I found it very good. I think it certainly met my expectations. The questions were very tough questions and I think they both rose to the challenge and provided the answers. The point that was raised in relation to the time factor, the format of the debate, obviously would have affected the kind of a detailed answer that we would have wanted. And secondly, that I think that outside of fact checking some of these things, I think the answers were very well good, and I'm proud and pleased with the response of the two political leaders who are offering themselves for leadership. It's a difficult call. None have convinced me to vote for one or the other, not because they did very badly, but because they did extremely well. You know, and I think that it's a very close debate. And as I said, outside of fact checking, if you're just looking at the responses to the thing and going to the manifesto, then obviously, you know, you'd be pleased with the kind of response.
Dr. Thame, tell me, where you cast a long shadow over the debate itself. Where did the leaders fail in your estimation?
You know, I was less satisfied with the level of specificity. I feel, for example, on the matter of water, which I think is really a current issue that is facing particularly Kingston and St. Andrew, I would have wanted to hear more about what are the plans for addressing leakage in the system, for example. What is the issue around how to fix our dams? And I don't think that the way that the climate change matter was addressed really speaks to us on how we are going to have water in our pipes over the next year even, right? On the question of crime, I felt I was unclear on what Prime Minister Andrew Holness was saying, in that he spoke to, you know, investing in the police force, etc., but so that they could do better policing. But I'm not clear on what does that mean? What is the way that they're policing differently than before? I think, you know, he pointed to the construction of police stations, or the improvement on police stations, which I think is important for the conditions of work for the force. But at the same time, in the context of SOEs and ZOSOs, what you also have is an overworked force. So that I feel that, you know, many of the contradictions that we feel in our lives were not made explicit. And I suppose that also relates to the kinds of questions that were asked. I would have wanted to hear more about how, for example, the pace of development is affecting our water supply. This idea, Holness started with the notion that, you know, there were homeowners, 20,000 more homeowners in Jamaica, and then he ended with the statistic suggesting that they've built these homes. And I want to understand that gap. So there were questions for me more so than answers. I didn't feel satisfied. I felt that, you know, the questions point us sometimes to the thinking about the leadership. And I feel that Holness didn't adequately respond to the ways in which the questions were pointing to authoritarian tendencies in his leadership. And I feel that Phillips wasn't sufficiently, you know, on it in zeroing in on that for us viewers, whereas the questions were leading us in a particular direction.
A serious credibility gap, don't you think, Dennis? Because right at the end there, Peter Phillips said, look, it was just 8,000 houses. You might have started 20,000 houses, but only 8,000 were completed.
No, there's not a credibility gap. If you listen to the answer carefully from Phillips, I think he misquoted something, because he said that the 2019 PIOJ report said 8,000 housing starts and 2,000 finished. What Holness said was that over the 4.5 years, not just 2019 alone, there were 22,000. So there's some reconciliation that needs to be done there. So I think that Phillips was focusing on 1 year, and that is the issue. So there needs to be some reconciliation. Holness's answer didn't clear up or clarify enough the 22,000 though, and there still needs to be that reconciliation. But I don't think the response from Phillips created a credibility gap, because he was speaking about 1 year based on his response.
Dr. Campbell, who punched harder?
I think Holness and Phillips were, to a large extent, quite prime ministerial. So we didn't see a lot of punching. They attempted to use their time in a more or less serious way. Wholeness did speak to the idea of a mass Tom, I believe, who is supposed to represent the average man. At one point, though, and that was clearly not a punching moment, that was more a moment of an emotional appeal to the average Jamaican. Phillips did at one point brought up the fact that there might be a bit of an arrogance in the leadership of Wholeness around certain constitutional issues and so on. And that was a pet issue for Phillips. He kept coming back to the issue of integrity and democratic accountability. And for Wholeness, clearly, he stuck to this idea that we have performed, which was very strategic. So Wholeness did a very good job of dodging the issues that he did not want to deal with and steering it right back to this idea that there are some outcomes that we can point to and we are about performing. And he attempted to convince the public that they had a steady, pragmatic hand that can actually guide the country. So I think you saw, and Phillips, of course, attempted to say, under my stewardship, I also provided housing in Portmore and so on and so forth. But I didn't see a lot of punching. It was a very sober debate. And yes, it was conducted in a slightly different way, I would say.
So the question, Danny Roberts, is that Andrew Wholeness succeeded in being the artful dodger.
Well, I've often said that, in a debate, it is not the occasion for you to concede and throw up and say, you made an error when we have an opportunity to offer an explanation. Anybody in that position, anybody, and I dare nobody to tell me otherwise, that they would obviously try to find an answer that they think is best suited to obfuscate perhaps the facts and the reality. That is what comes out in a debate. The important point, as we said, is if you fact check that, then the question of your credibility comes into play, and that can become a negative in terms of people's response still. But at the moment, what better answer to provide?
Right. Okay. We're running out of time right now. We can't dodge that one. So I'm going to give about a minute to each of you all to sum up your feelings about the debate, just and maybe to say who won, beginning with Dr. Thame.
Well, I want to speak not specifically to my feelings about the debate, but the kinds of questions that I was left with. And they include, this notion that because people are asking for states of emergency, that is an indication that it is the right way to go in a context in which we have a history of, conceding human rights in this country. And I would have wanted to hear a kind of back and forth around that idea of what we want the nation to look like in the context of, how do we move from fear to respect for each other. I would have also wanted to hear a debate around inequality in Jamaica and how it is that this particular dispensation is, both in terms of COVID and the management of the economy prior to COVID, is, even if you're talking about reductions in poverty, it's not properly addressing the problems of inequality. So I think I would have wanted, a more fulsome exploration of what the quality of life is like for Jamaicans in the everyday.
And the winner is?
I don't think there was a winner. I don't want to pronounce any winner because I think that, Phillips was clear. I think that Wholeness oftentimes did not answer questions. But I also felt that Phillips missed opportunities to, respond, to rebut to assertions that were made by Wholeness. Holness spoke with confidence, so did Phillips, but I think that, there was a certain way in which Holness's style was more easy, I suppose.
Dennis Chung, you have 60 seconds to say your feeling about the debate and who won.
I think it was a good debate. I think that both acquitted themselves well in terms of the answers. They sounded very confident about what they were saying. Both of them did not answer things that were asked of them. And critical things also. I mean, Holness on the corruption thing, he didn't answer. Phillips, for example, didn't answer, how could they have voted for the SOEs, but then come out on a point of principle and say that that they didn't support it. But that's how debates are. As Danny says, people answer what they think they're strong at, because they only have 90 seconds. So I think both of them did well from that point of view. I think that the style, as I said just before, of Holness was a little easier, but Phillips did very well. And therefore, I mean, for the first time, I am not going to declare a winner because I don't, it's very difficult for me. I mean, if I had to make a decision on this debate for Thursday coming, I could not. I would vote for the JPP instead and get the fighter jets.
60 seconds for you, Dr. Campbell.
I agree with Dennis and with Maziki on some of the issues. Just in terms of the style of the debate, there is logical consistency. We got some facts. There was a little bit of an emotional appeal on Holness's side mainly. Phillips was also, doing a bit of an appeal. I think he talked about God when he said he was healthy and so on. More though, I agree with Maziki on the issue of policing and security and what is to be done about that. We did not get any clear alternatives. So it's still very much the paramilitary crime control dominant approach that we've used, and it has not yielded any results. Very little around social intervention. I also wanted to see more on the, how do you reform the police? I agree, it's quite vague to say you're engaging in reform and you're spending money and you're increasing numbers, very vague. On the education matter as well, I wanted to see more around how we move away from the neo-colonial model, the traditional versus non-traditional schools in Jamaica, and how do you make it a more equitable system, and a little on prime ministerial power. There's too much power invested in the prime minister, and that issue came up as well.
Right, Danny Roberts, she has taken 30 seconds out of your 60 seconds. Can you believe?
Very quickly, there's nothing earth-shattering in the manifestos of both political parties. They are actually operating from the same playbook. The economic model set by the IMF is something that both carry through. I found the debate quite interesting. I agree with Dennis. This was a good debate. The answer to the questions were the best under the circumstances in some situations. I mean, I would have provided the same answer for some of them. To respond in 90 seconds and to find out what is the best key points to respond to, it's certainly difficult at the moment. I thought Peter Phillips started out a little too tentative in his opening statement, but he was able to catch up during the question and answer session.
Danny Roberts, you won't get away. Who won?
No, it's a dead heat. The jury is still out, but it provides an opportunity for them. Dr. Thiem raised some issues, and it provides an opportunity for them if they want to satisfy the electorate about some of the things that this, in the post-debate period, is an opportunity for them to come out with some more fulsome answers to be able to try to persuade those persons who are on the margins of decision.
Well, this is where I have to leave it, Danny. Danny Roberts, Dennis Chung, Dr. Maziki Thiem, and Dr. Unique Campbell joining us this evening on the post-debate analysis. This has been Election 2020. Thank you very much for joining us.